You think I stole from you? After everything I just did to save your life? Naomi's voice cracked as it rang through the grand marble foyer of Damien Whitlock's penthouse. Her chest rose and fell, sweat and soot still clinging to her skin. Her scarf had slipped halfway down, revealing curls matted with wind and oil. Her trembling hands still clutched the scuffed motorcycle helmet. Damien stood several feet away, his tailored white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, pale blue eyes burning with accusation. Don't play the victim, Naomi. That Ducati is worth more than your entire life. And you— His lip curled with contempt. You dared put your hands on it without my permission? The room was silent. His security guards, his assistant, even the private chef all stood frozen, eyes darting between the billionaire and the maid. The air was thick with the weight of his fury. Naomi swallowed hard, her gaze falling briefly to the polished floors before she lifted it again, steady though afraid. I didn't steal it, Don't lie to me, Damien's voice cracked like a whip. He stepped closer, the veins in his temples throbbing. I should have you arrested this very moment. The words stung worse than a slap. Arrested. A criminal. That's how he saw her. Naomi felt her throat tighten, but she forced herself not to cry. Not in front of them. Not in front of him. The scene had begun just minutes earlier, when Naomi returned from her frantic ride. Only hours ago she'd overheard voices in the service corridor, men whispering plans to ambush Damien during his night drive. She hadn't had time to warn him, he was already heading for his motorcycle. And so, driven by instinct and desperation, she had taken it herself. She lured them away, speeding through the streets until her arms ached and her lungs burned, until finally she'd shaken them off. Now here she stood, the supposed savior, branded as a thief. Damien's assistant, Lydia, adjusted her glasses nervously. Sir, maybe— Enough, Damien snapped, silencing her instantly. He pivoted back to Naomi, his polished shoes echoing on the marble. You come from nothing, don't you? You think because you scrub my floors you're entitled to my property? To me? Naomi's fingers dug into the helmet. Heat rose in her chest, shame and anger twisted together. She wanted to scream, to tell him the truth, to tell them all what she had faced out there on the streets, but her voice shrank beneath the weight of his gaze. Instead, she whispered, I only wanted to help. Damien let out a laugh, sharp, cold, humiliating. Help? You risked scratching the most expensive machine I own. You're lucky I don't drag you down to the station myself. A murmur rippled through the staff. Some pitied Naomi, others dared not show it. The power imbalance was too dangerous. Naomi felt her body shrink inward, her shoulders curling as though her very presence was an offense. But inside, a small spark of defiance lit. She thought of her mother, long gone, who had taught her never to bow her head to cruelty. She thought of her dream to become a nurse, a dream that meant carrying dignity even in the darkest corners. She lifted her chin, just barely. One day, she said softly, almost to herself, you'll see the truth. Damien's jaw tightened. He turned away as though dismissing her from existence. Get out of my sight. If I see you near that motorcycle again, Naomi, you're finished here. The command sliced through the air. Naomi stepped back, her feet heavy, her pride battered. But as she turned toward the service corridor, her heart whispered the words her mouth could not yet form. I saved you, Damien Whitlock, and one day the world will know it. The morning sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Damien Whitlock. Kay's penthouse, gilding every surface in gold. Yet the light could not soften the frost in the air. Naomi moved quietly through the rooms, polishing the crystal vases and dusting the marble counters, her presence so careful it was nearly invisible. But the memory of last night clung to her like smoke. Every time her eyes brushed across the gleaming Ducati parked in the private garage below, her stomach knotted. She could still feel the vibration of the engine beneath her hands, still hear the shouts of the men chasing her through dark alleys. She had done it for him. She had risked her life. And yet— Thief! The word whispered in her mind, echoing Damien's accusation. The billionaire entered the room without warning, his cologne, sharp, expensive, announcing him before his footsteps did. His white dress shirt was crisp, his silver cufflinks gleaming, his expression already carved into stone. Naomi stiffened, lowering her gaze. Coffee, Damien ordered, not sparing her more than a glance. "Yes, sir." Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly as she prepared it. From the dining table, Damien scrolled through his phone. "Do you know what they're saying about me in the business columns this morning? That I'm reckless. That I surround myself with incompetents who don't know their place." His tone dripped with venom. His blue eyes lifted to Naomi, narrowing. "Do you know what that makes me look like?" Naomi set the cup before him, careful not to meet his gaze. "I'm sorry, sir." "You're always sorry," he shot back. "Sorry doesn't keep engines from being stolen in the middle of the night. Sorry doesn't save reputations." Her hands curled into fists at her sides. The injustice burned in her chest, but she swallowed it, burying the words she longed to scream. Lydia, his assistant, entered with a tablet in hand. She hesitated when she saw Naomi, as though she could still feel the invisible storm hanging between them. "Mr. Whitlock, the security footage. From last night." Damien raised a hand, cutting her off. "I don't need excuses. I know what I saw." Naomi's heart skipped. She wanted to plead her case, to beg him to look deeper. But Lydia's downcast eyes told her not to try. No one dared contradict Damien when his temper boiled. The rest of the day passed in shadows. The chef whispered to Naomi in the kitchen, his voice tinged with pity. "Just keep your head down, girl, he'll get over it." But Naomi knew better. Damien's pride was a fortress. Once wounded, it did not heal easily. That evening, as the city lights blinked to life, Naomi walked home alone through Harlem. Her apartment was small, walls peeling, the air heavy with the scent of fried food from the diner below. She sank onto her bed, exhaustion tugging at her bones. Yet sleep would not come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the look on Damien's face when he called her a thief. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her younger brother, Isaiah, who lived out of state. "How's work? You okay?" Naomi's fingers hovered over the keys. She wanted to tell him everything, the danger, the motorcycle, the humiliation. But she couldn't bear to make him worry. Instead, she typed back, "I'm fine. Just tired." Far across the city, Damien reclined in his private study, a glass of scotch in hand. But even surrounded by wealth, the thought of Naomi gnawed at him, the fire in her eyes when she whispered, "One day, you'll see the truth." He told himself it was insolence, arrogance from a maid who didn't know her place. Yet some part of him, buried and unwanted, felt unsettled. Outside, the world spun as usual. But in the silence between master and maid, the weight of a lie grew heavier. And unseen, the truth Naomi carried, the danger she had faced, was beginning to stir in the shadows of the city, waiting for its moment to break free. By the third day, the whispers had grown too loud to ignore. Naomi felt them wherever she moved in the penthouse, the eyes of the other staff trailing her, the hushed voices just out of earshot. She took the Ducati. He caught her. Can you believe it? The story had spread like spilled ink, staining her reputation. She worked silently, her back straight, her steps light, but inside she ached. She wanted to scream the truth, that she had not stolen, but saved, that Damien would be dead or bleeding in an alley had she not acted. Yet she held her tongue, for what good were words when a man like him had already marked her guilty? At noon, Damien called for her. His voice boomed down the hallway, sharp as glass. "Naomi, in here, now." She entered his private office, her pulse thudding. The room smelled of polished leather and expensive bourbon. Floor-to-ceiling windows cast the city in miniature behind him. Damien leaned back in a black chair, sleeves rolled up, forearms tense. His gaze swept over her like a blade. "You've become a distraction," he said. "My investors ask why I keep incompetent staff. Do you understand the position you've put me in?" Naomi steadied her voice. "I didn't mean—" "Don't interrupt me." His tone sliced through her words. He stood, pacing. "You've embarrassed me, and you're lucky I haven't pressed charges." Humiliation burned her cheeks. She kept her hands clasped, nails biting into her skin. But then, for the first time, something inside her cracked. "I saved your life," she whispered. Damien froze. His pale eyes narrowed. "What did you just say?" Her voice grew stronger, trembling but fierce. "That night. They were waiting for you. Men with bats, knives, I heard them. I took the Ducati because if you rode it, they would have killed you. I led them away. That's why I risked everything." The words spilled like fire, scorching the silence between them. Damien stared, disbelief hardening his jaw. Then, slowly, he shook his head and laughed bitterly. Do you expect me to believe that fairy tale? That a maid turned into some kind of hero on a motorcycle? Don't insult me.
Naomi!
Her chest tightened. She had bared herself, and he had mocked it. But before she could answer, Lydia entered, clutching her tablet. Mr. Whitlock, you should see this. Her voice trembled. She turned the screen toward him. A news article glowed across it. Delivery driver witnesses attempted ambush in Midtown. Mystery rider escapes. The headline was bold, the story alive with details. A young courier had spoken to reporters about seeing masked men chasing a black Ducati, a woman at the handlebars. The rider had vanished into the night, but the delivery driver had called her fearless. Naomi's heart leapt and sank all at once. Proof. But not enough. Not yet. Damien's eyes flicked from the screen to Naomi. His lips thinned. Coincidence, he muttered, brushing it aside. Yet his shoulders betrayed him, rigid with doubt. Naomi met his gaze fully, her own steady, a quiet storm behind them. One day, she said again, firmer now, the truth will come out. And when it does, you'll have to answer for what you've done to me. The office went silent, thick with tension. Damien dismissed her with a wave, but his fingers gripped the glass of bourbon tighter than before. Later that evening, as Naomi scrubbed the marble floors on her knees, she felt the sting of shame more than the ache in her hands. But she also felt something else. A flicker of strength, small, but growing. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving Damien Whitlock's cruelty. She was preparing to stand against it. And somewhere across the city, the story of the mystery rider continued to spread, its threads weaving toward a confrontation neither she nor Damien could yet imagine. The gala glittered like a scene from a dream, chandeliers dripping with crystal light, tuxedos and gowns swirling across the ballroom floor, the hum of violins filling the air. But beneath the glamour, tension pulleys, said like a hidden drum. Damien Whitlock stood at the center of it all, polished and commanding in a midnight blue tuxedo. Cameras flashed as he shook hands with investors, his smile sharp, his voice smooth. He thrived in this world of power and performance. Tonight, he was raising millions for his real estate foundation, cementing his reputation as both ruthless businessman and generous philanthropist. But he hadn't noticed Naomi yet. She had not wanted to come. Yet Lydia insisted she was needed, pressed into service with a tray of champagne flutes balanced in her hands. Dressed in the black and white uniform of the staff, Naomi moved like a shadow among the glittering elite. Her scarf was neat, her expression quiet, but her heart beat heavy with dread. As she passed through the crowd, whispers brushed her ears again, not about theft this time, but about the article. The mystery rider. A woman. Could it be true? The delivery driver's story had gained traction. And in this room, buzzing with journalists and donors, speculation hung like smoke. Naomi's hands shook as she offered a glass to a guest. She prayed no one would notice. Then it happened. A reporter, bold and brash, stepped up to Damien just as he prepared to address the crowd. Microphone raised, camera flashing. Mr. Whitlock, care to comment on the news that your life was nearly taken in an attempted ambush this week? And that an unidentified woman, possibly someone under your employment, was the one who saved you? The ballroom stilled, heads turned, the music faltered. Damien's jaw locked, but his smile remained plastered in place. Nonsense, he said smoothly. Baseless rumors. But the reporter pressed. Eyewitness accounts describe a black woman on a Ducati, your Ducati. People are calling her a hero. Is it true, Mr. Whitlock? Did your maid save your life? Naomi froze. The tray in her hands wobbled dangerously. Her name hadn't been spoken, but every head swiveled toward her anyway, suspicion flickering like sparks. Damien's pale eyes found hers across the room. In them she saw the battle, denial wrestling with the truth he could no longer bury. And then, in the quiet that seemed to stretch forever, Naomi heard her own voice break through the silence, steady but trembling. I did. Gasps rippled across the crowd, cameras pivoted toward her. The tray clattered as she set it down, her hands suddenly free. She stepped forward, her scarf slipping slightly as her curls framed her face, her brown eyes burning with courage. I took that motorcycle, she said, her voice stronger now, because I heard men plotting to kill you. I rode into danger so you wouldn't. I risked my life, For you. And for that, you called me a thief." The room erupted in murmurs, some shocked, some skeptical, some awed. Damien's face drained of color, his composure cracked, a fissure spreading across the mask he wore so carefully. The billionaire, always in control, suddenly looked small. "Naomi," he began, but his voice caught. He turned to the audience, to the reporters, the investors, all eyes demanding truth. His hands trembled at his sides. For the first time in his life, Damien Whitlock faltered. His arrogance crumbled under the weight of her words. His throat worked, his chest heaving, as if the walls of his fortress were collapsing around him. And then, to the astonishment of everyone in the ballroom, Damien sank to his knees. "Forgive me," he choked, his voice thick with something raw and unpracticed. "Shame. I was blind. I accused you. I humiliated you. And you—" His voice broke. He bowed his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "You saved me." The room gasped again, but this time in awe. A billionaire on his knees before his maid. Cameras flashed like lightning. Naomi stood still, her breath catching, her heart torn between anger and pity. For the first time, Damien was stripped bare, not the rut, a less mogul, not the untouchable king of Manhattan, but a man, broken by his own pride. The ballroom watched, waiting for her response. And Naomi, standing tall in her uniform, realized she held the power now. The ballroom buzzed like a hive after Damien fell to his knees. Guests whispered behind jeweled hands. Phones lifted to capture every second. The billionaire, known for his icy rage and untouchable pride, now knelt trembling before the maid he had scorned. Naomi's chest rose and fell, her pulse drumming in her ears. She hadn't wanted this, not the cameras, not the spectacle, but the truth had demanded to be spoken, and here it was, laid bare before the world. "Naomi," Damien said again, his voice raw, shaky. "I was wrong. I was cruel. I saw only what I wanted to see, a maid who touched what was mine. I didn't see you." His eyes lifted, rimmed red, pale blue glass cracking open to something human. The crowd murmured louder. Some sneered at his humiliation, others leaned forward, enthralled. Investors whispered about reputations, while reporters scribbled furiously, their headlines already writing themselves. "Billionaire begs Maid for forgiveness." Naomi's throat tightened. She could feel the weight of every gaze pressing down on her. For years she had been invisible, moving silently in the shadows of wealth and power, and now she was the center of it all. She steadied herself, her hands folded in front of her, her chin raised. "You accused me of being a thief," she said softly, but her words carried across the ballroom like a blade. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You threatened to destroy my life." Damien flinched. "And yet," Naomi continued, her voice trembling only slightly, "I still got on that motorcycle to save yours." The crowd fell silent. Even the violins, abandoned mid-song, seemed to wait. Damien pressed his palms to the floor, bowing his head lower. "I can't undo what I did. But I will spend whatever it takes, do whatever it takes to make this right. Please, tell me how to make this right." Naomi looked at him for a long, quiet moment. She saw the tuxedo, the cameras, the empire behind him. But she also saw the man, handsome, proud, yet shattered now by his own shame. Finally, she spoke. "Respect me. Believe me. Not because of money, not because of power, but because I'm human. That's all I ever wanted." A hush swept the room. Then, a ripple of applause began, hesitant at first, then swelling. Some guests clapped politely, others earnestly, their eyes shining. A few wealthy elites scowled, uncomfortable with the reversal of power. But the story had shifted, irreversibly. Naomi was no longer the maid accused of theft. She was the woman who saved a billionaire's life and stood tall in the truth of it. Lydia, watching from the sidelines, wiped tears from her eyes. The chef in the back clapped harder than anyone else. Even the reporter who had stirred the fire looked at Naomi with respect. Damien rose slowly to his feet, shoulders heavy but no longer rigid with pride. He looked smaller, human, as though the weight of decades of arrogance had finally broken. Naomi turned from him, her tray of champagne glasses abandoned. She walked calmly toward the staff corridor, her head high. For the first time in years, she felt the air in her lungs belonged to her alone. Behind her, Damien faced the sea of flashing cameras. His voice was quieter now but resolute. "She saved me. And I—" He hesitated, swallowing hard. "I will never forget it." The ballroom erupted again, a storm of voices and questions, but Naomi was gone, slipping out into the night, where the city lights burned brighter than chandeliers. For once, she was no longer just a shadow in someone else's story. She was her own. And Damien Whitlock, the man who had once mocked her, would now be forced to live with the world watching him through the lens of her truth. The headline. As arrived the next morning like thunder. Billionaire falls to his knees before Maid who saved his life. The mystery writer revealed, Naomi Carter, the unsung hero of Manhattan. Whitlock's humiliation becomes his reckoning. Every major outlet carried the story. Photographs of Damien kneeling on the ballroom floor filled front pages, his face pale and undone, Naomi standing tall in her uniform behind him. The internet roared. Some mocked, some cheered, but all of them watched. Inside the penthouse, silence reigned. Damien hadn't left his study since dawn, blinds drawn, phone buzzing endlessly with calls from investors, journalists, and rivals. His empire trembled, not from financial ruin, but from the collapse of the persona he had built so carefully. Untouchable, ruthless, flawless. Naomi moved through the suite with quiet resolve. She no longer shrank into corners. The staff, once whispering, now looked at her with something closer to reverence. Even Lydia, who had always tiptoed around Damien, smiled gently at Naomi as she passed. But Damien avoided her. Until noon. He emerged at last, his tuxedo gone, dressed instead in a plain gray sweater and dark slacks, so uncharacteristic it startled the staff. His pale eyes were rimmed with sleeplessness, his jaw unshaven. He found Naomi in the kitchen, rinsing dishes. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, almost uncertain. Naomi dried her hands, turned to face him. She no longer bowed her head. "Go on," she said. Damien exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his face. "I built my life on power, on control, on making sure no one could ever humiliate me. And then you—" His voice faltered. "You showed me I was already smaller than I thought." Naomi said nothing, waiting. He swallowed. "I wronged you. Publicly, cruelly. And I can't undo it. But I can change what happens next." His gaze met hers, raw, stripped of arrogance. "Let me sponsor you. Pay for school, for whatever dream you've hidden because of money. It's the least I can do." Naomi's chest tightened. For a moment she saw herself in the reflection of the window behind him, the maid's uniform, the scarf, the quiet grace she had always carried. And she saw, superimposed over it, the woman she longed to become. A nurse in scrubs, her hands steady, not with cleaning rags, but with healing. "Why?" she asked softly. "Is it guilt?" "Yes," Damien admitted without hesitation. "And maybe respect. For the first time in my life, I respect someone more than myself." His honesty caught her off guard. Naomi turned away briefly, staring at the sink. "I don't need your money to prove my worth." "No," Damien said, stepping closer. "But you deserve the chance to live the life you want. And I can give you that. No strings." Her heart wrestled with the offer. Pride told her to refuse, to walk away with nothing but her dignity. But another voice, quieter yet steadier, whispered that dignity also meant accepting a chance to rise higher, to honor the sacrifices she and her late mother had endured. Finally, she nodded once. Not as charity, as recognition, as respect. Damien's throat bobbed. "As respect," he repeated. For the first time, Naomi saw him not as the cruel billionaire, but as a man unraveling and rebuilding in the same breath. That evening, when the staff gathered quietly for dinner, Damien stood before them. His voice shook, but he spoke. "I wronged someone in this household, Naomi Carter, and I want you all to hear me say it. She is not a thief. She is braver than any of us. She saved my life." Gasps, murmurs, then silence. Naomi felt every eye on her. Heat rose to her cheeks, but this time it wasn't shame, it was pride. The balance had shifted. Damien had been exposed, stripped, humbled. Naomi had been seen finally for who she was. The empire of Whitlock still stood, but its ruler had changed. Naomi stood by the wide glass windows of the penthouse watching Manhattan glitter beneath at the night sky. The city buzzed endlessly, but for the first time in weeks, her heart felt still. Tomorrow, everything would change. Behind her, Damien's footsteps approached. He no longer carried the hard echo of command. His gait was slower now, weighted with humility. He stopped a few feet away, silent for a long moment. "You're leaving tomorrow," he said finally. Naomi nodded. "Yes, classes start next week. I found a small place near the campus." He exhaled through his nose as if steadying himself. "I'll make sure you have everything you need, books, tuition, whatever it takes." She turned to face him, her scarf catching the soft glow of the lights. "I'll accept your help, but only once. After that I stand on my own." Damien's jaw tightened, then softened. "Fair." A quiet lingered between them, filled with things neither dared to say. Damien's eyes searched hers, pale blue against warm brown, as if looking for something he couldn't name. "You've changed me," he admitted, voice low. "I don't know if I'll ever deserve your forgiveness, Naomi, but I'll try." Naomi studied him, the once arrogant billionaire now stripped to something human. She saw his guilt, his remorse, his fragile hope. She could not forget the humiliation, the cruelty, but she could see the man struggling to grow beyond it. "You don't need me to forgive you," she said softly. "You need to forgive yourself, and live differently from now on." Damien's throat bobbed as he nodded. She turned back to the city, her reflection shimmering in the glass. "I used to think my life would always be cleaning up other people's messes. Invisible. Small. But now—" She smiled faintly. "Now I know I can be more. Because I already was, even when no one believed it." The words settled over Damien like a quiet absolution. The next morning, Naomi left the penthouse with a single suitcase. The staff gathered at the service entrance, offering embraces and whispered goodbyes. Lydia hugged her tightly, whispering, "Go change the world, Naomi." Naomi smiled, her eyes glistening. "Damia." Anne stood a little apart, hands in his pockets, the sun glinting off the glass towers behind him. For once, he didn't command, didn't demand. He simply said, "Thank you for everything." Naomi met his gaze one last time. "Goodbye, Mr. Whitlock." She walked down the street, the city air fresh on her face, her heart light. Each step carried her farther from the shadows of servitude, closer to the future she had dreamed of. Behind her, Damien watched until she disappeared into the crowd. His empire still stood, his wealth untouched. But for the first time, he felt the emptiness of power without grace. He vowed silently to rebuild not just buildings, but himself. Naomi's story had begun as a maid in a penthouse. It ended here, as a woman reborn in her own dignity, walking toward the life she had fought to claim. The city roared around her, but inside, there was peace. And somewhere, beneath the noise and the lights, the truth of it lingered like a promise. That courage and dignity, once revealed, could never again be silenced.